segment about the oldest known name of God, and that name's metaphysical significance is, to me at least, one of the most important and profound spiritual concepts I have ever found, and played an important role in changing my life. Before I get into everything else in this chapter, I want to say something about metaphysics. Some people think that metaphysics supersedes the laws of physics, but the teachings say that this is not the case. True metaphysics should just expand on the true laws of physics. Over the years, physicists have often discovered that some of what they thought were final facts or immutable laws of physics weren't so immutable after all, and thus not really laws. And in the future, more laws may be broken. But there are certain immutable true laws of physics. These are the ones that are aspects of the universal law, and as such will always remain the same. These are the laws that any other law, metaphysical principle or concept, must be in harmony with and be measured against. Thus, if a person wants to learn and understand true metaphysics, there's no better place to start than by studying and understanding the great laws of the universe. Here are quotes from some of the ancient texts that discover the basic concepts involved. All is vibration. All vibration follows universal law. All gives, all receives, all loves. All vibration seeks its own level. To find any level, set forth the vibration. By law, you will go there. By law, it will come. Always is there a greater vibration. Always is there a lesser vibration. In harmony with universal law, all vibration moves as one flow. Interrupt the flow only to find, in this natural order thus does it go. In forever passing through, divided in two, receptivity by the way of emptiness. The one calls to come and fill, giving by the way of abundance. The one flows forth to fill. Always then the way of the flow, dependence on that which is above, the object of dependence to that which is below. Two will repel, two will attract, two will together interact. Look then to four, for all that need be, for all creation vibration be. 1, 2, 1 and 2, 3. 1 and 2 beget 4. Thus opens the infinite door. Yod-He Vav-He, pronounce it right, to open the gates of heaven, and live in the light. Build ye life as the pyramid, 4 corners converge above, with fire in the middle, the fire of love, life, mind, truth, love, spirit. Energy great does course through this earth, collect and direct, if it be your will, with the shape of the temple, pure stones and gold-laden box, or with the mind, focused and pure, lowered in vibration, to 10 in meditation. Vibration does flow in body and soul, high and low in all flesh is written. Tune may you to the right vibrations, colors and sounds that change what we know. Use them, may you, to heal, sow, and grow. Power great above and below. Key are vibrations secret but to few. Find them you will, by measure and trial, and use of the word that rules all creation. Describe a rainbow to a blind man, will you? Open your eyes. Senses 5 does man perceive, the focus on self restricts all that is, limited in scope, the oceans not seen, a drop of rain. He believes in his world. So as he believes, so he shall be. Let it be written. Everything orbits something. All matter is as the universe, stars, planets, time, and space. In search of real metaphysics. When I was a young teenager, I was fascinated with metaphysics, and in particular, concepts about astral travel, unknown energy, and color sound healing. I read everything I could find, and much of it was exciting and mentally stimulating. But I soon came to realize that not one of the books gave any real facts about color or sound, or their workings in theory. Some sure gave me information, but it made no real sense when you looked into it objectively and thoroughly. It was just metaphysical mumbo-jumbo. You might read something like, "Purple is the color of Aquarius, Thursdays in blah blah blah, and is associated with the note low C. Purple can be used to heal the gallstones and blah blah blah." But how did purple do that? Why? And what source was this information from? Could it be proven? And I was a musician, yet I couldn't understand what the heck low C was. Other mentions in the book indicated that they were not using the system of sharps and flats in the chromatic musical scale, so it couldn't mean C flat. And there was already a mention of regular C. In all the books I read, I couldn't find one thing that a real metaphysician, a scientist, or would-be scientist could actually experiment with or use. I was so happy to find that the children had teachings that actually gave me the physics involved with these sciences, and facts that made sense. With this information, I was able to discover many things like the real colors associated with real musical notes. I could demonstrate it mathematically and prove it. And I could make a device that combined the two. This was real metaphysics at last. Crystals. Some people have heard about quartz crystals, and most people sense that there is something very special about them. Friends in books may have reference to crystal energy and healing with them, or related crystals, and talked about how cosmic they are. I'd heard all that too, but it was almost always too vague and unsubstantiated for me. I wanted to know more, and I wanted facts. Here are some of those facts, the real metaphysical scoop on crystals. Crystals are amazing energy transmutators. They can take electricity and change it into physical vibration. They can also do the opposite, take vibration and change it to electricity. Because of the transmuting property of crystals, they have been used by most people on a daily basis for quite some time, and many people aren't even aware of it. In fact, for many years, crystals were vital to the workings of radio and TV. The crystals transform the vibrations of electricity, changing them to the very rapid and specific vibrations of radio, TV waves. Those waves travel through the air to wherever we are, and then crystals change them back to electricity, allowing us to hear or see something that is going on in faraway places. Each receiving crystal is tuned to a specific frequency of vibration, which matches a transmitting crystal. By changing your receiving crystal, you change channels. This is the same for radio, TV, walkie-talkies, CBs, ham, whatever. Before the advent of synthesized tuners, you had to have a different crystal for every different channel or frequency you wanted to use. Some of you know how all cigarette lighters used to have a flint and wheel, Stone Age stuff, that made sparks that ignited either lighter fluid or butane. Many modern lighters have switched to a different system, crystal technology. Instead of spinning a wheel with your thumb to make a spark, you just push down a button or a plunger, and it makes a click and lights. Those lighters use a tiny piece of crystal that creates an electrical spark with no batteries or anything. They take advantage of a property of crystals they call piezoelectric. It's amazing how they work. When you press down on the lighter's button, it cocks a piece of plastic or metal, and when you hear the click, you're hearing the sound of the crystal being struck by that plastic or metal piece, snapping down on it. When the crystal is struck, this creates a vibration pressure on the crystal, causing it to give off a spark or electricity, igniting the butane. You may know that almost every watch and many clocks these days have quartz movements. The quartz crystals in these are used to do the opposite of the quartz in the lighters. It's the same stuff. It's still quartz crystal, but they use it in a different way. In this case, instead of using a vibration or a strike to make electricity, they use electricity, a battery, to make the crystal vibrate. The constant vibration of the quartz, due to applying electricity to it, is the basis for measuring off the seconds, minutes, and hours. Because the quartz vibrates in a consistent manner, they can count how many times it vibrates per whatever time period, and calculate that to keep time. All of that's pretty amazing, really, but crystals can do much more. In Atlantis, the sons of Belial used lasers and geothermal-type approaches to create energy, to feed their power-hungry energy demands. As was mentioned earlier, their power plants were instrumental in the terrible destructive earth changes that destroyed Atlantis. But the children were more power conservative. It's not that they had to do without, but they found that the vast amounts of power that exists in the Earth's biofield was plenty for all their needs. So they used crystals not only for healing, but for powering their buildings and their vehicles. The last of the children's greatest power plants was the Great Pyramid in Egypt. The Great Pyramid was also used for initiation. More about that in the chapter on the death experience. Vishnu, who was an expert on both ancient technology and the present state of the world's technology, explained more to me about the power of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. You've probably heard many things about the Bible's legendary Ark of the Covenant. If you know about electronic components, which I did since I was a 5-year-old little genius electronics freak, and you read even the worldly Bible's description of the Ark, which I hadn't, you will realize that this was a giant electrical capacitor. A capacitor is a device usually found in an electronic circuit that stores up electricity on a certain level and then releases it in a burst. This is why the Ark had the reputation that if you touched it or got too close to it, you'd get zapped by a lightning bolt from God. The size of the Ark as a capacitor held a charge big enough to make a bolt that would easily kill anyone who got near it, and would kill many people. When I was a child, I opened the back of our TV. There was a label on one area that said, "Warning, high voltage, do not touch." To me, it was an invitation. So what did I do? I touched it. and I got a shock that sent me flying across the room and slammed into a wall. I later found out it was the capacitor, and it was only about the size of a salt shaker. So I can imagine what a huge thing like the Ark would put out. They probably should have called it the Ark instead, like an electric arc. Yeah, anyway, only David in his humility was able to touch the Ark without being killed. Why? Because of his advanced spiritual development. His energy centers, his chakras, were prepared to deal with such power and the frequency of the electricity. And of course, with the guidance of the hierarchy and his destiny, the raw power was transformed and channeled in such a way that it only made for a Kundalini experience, a communing with God, and instead of being killed, he came out of it wiser and more powerful. But you said the Ark was a power device in Egypt in the Great Pyramid. Why did David have it, and what was he doing with it? It was once the power storage device inside the Great Pyramid, yes, and I will get to that in a moment. But first, understand what we started to discuss. The pyramid had a layered capstone of copper and custom-created quartz crystal from Atlantis. The pyramid would collect energy from the Earth's biofield and focus it in the Ark. The Ark would release regular bursts of a specific frequency of electrical energy that would be transmuted and transmitted from the crystal capstone. All the children's buildings and vehicles had receiver crystals tuned to the pyramid and would pick up and change the energy back into usable power. We're still using this here today. Now, as to your question about how David came into possession of it, read the text to get the entire story. But basically, during what they called the Exodus, when Moses freed the Jews in Egypt, the Jews went on a sort of freedom celebration rampage as they left, and took all kinds of Egyptian treasures, taking everything they could on their way out of town. This, which has been omitted greatly in the world's modern Bible, was one of the primary things which excited the Pharaoh to pursue them, and one of the things they took from Egypt, from the Great Pyramid, was the Ark. Yes. Then, of course, over time, knowledge of its original use was lost. They did not understand its power, and attributed it to a power of God, which was quite logical to them. It would strike people down who got near or touched it, and this was easily interpreted by some that it must be some sort of temple God lived in, and only the holiest of people were allowed to get so close to God. And in it, they eventually put the pieces of the commandments Moses brought them, that he smashed in his righteous indignation and despair over their unconsciousness and selfishness. Where is it now? We have a version of one of the capacitors here, as you know, but the one from the Great Pyramid is located in a small church in Ethiopia. A small church in Ethiopia? Yes, I know it sounds odd, but there is a good reason. It was brought there by a small contingent of Jewish priests because they held it in very high regard as a holy religious item, and were concerned about it being desecrated or destroyed during an impending invasion. But why Ethiopia? It's a long story, but basically it's because of the bonds that had been formed there by the coming together of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, who was the ruler of what is now called Ethiopia. Just read about it in the text when you have time. Healing with crystals and vibration. All things vibrate and have different vibratory characteristics. Did you know that body parts, including cells and organs, have vibrational signatures? There are healthy vibrational signatures as well as diseased vibrational signatures. Understanding these scientifically and having the advanced technology to alter our body's vibrational signatures allows us to heal many ailments. In Atlantis, crystal technology was used for this. But the amount of knowledge and experimentation involved in cataloging all the different vibrational and electrical parameters of every detailed part of a human body is immense. It staggers the imagination, not to mention the technology involved in creating the right crystals and methods of applying them. The technology needed to properly use such knowledge is also incredibly advanced. But it was done in Atlantis, and the technology and knowledge was brought to Egypt and then some of it to Tibet. It's been recently rediscovered by modern scientists, which we will get to in a moment. Atlanteans used very sophisticated crystal technology to heal, and many people internally remember or intuitively sense that this kind of healing did and does exist. But they try to use quartz crystals this way or go to healers who use crystals. But such crystals are wild cards. They are all formed differently and perform differently. And most who use them are deluding themselves because they don't know what frequencies they're actually dealing with, or how to properly apply them even if they had the right crystals for the task. Atlanteans had an entire science devoted to using crystals to manipulate vibrations very specifically. Atlanteans didn't just pick up a crystal at the local bookstore and try to start healing with it. Whether it was used for healing or powering a house, Atlantean technology gave them access to many different specifically designed crystals, each designed to specific parameters according to their scientific knowledge of making each one a specific tool for a specific vibratory function. There were thousands of specifically tuned crystals available for healing alone, and using a quartz crystal without the extensive knowledge involved in using it properly is not only likely to be useless, but it can be harmful under certain circumstances. In other instances, the placebo effect can induce healing, though. For those who want to use crystal vibrational healing techniques, there are viable alternatives from modern scientific research. There are a couple of amazing devices that are close to the old Atlantean technology, but it took resources like government laboratories and scientists to develop them. They are called the electroacuoscope and the electromyopulse, manufactured by a company called Electromedical in Fountain Valley, California. While the devices use the same principles involved with Atlantean crystal healing, neutralizing disease frequency vibrations and transmitting healthy frequency vibrations, they use a somewhat different method of creating the body frequency vibrations, vibrational synthesis. While not as sophisticated or powerful as the Atlantean technology, these amazing devices not only heal, but give the body and mind a tune-up, so it can function at its maximum potential. We studied and tested these machines extensively and objectively for about 10 years. It is our opinion that if every doctor used one, hospitals would have about 90% less patients. And while the devices remain relatively unknown, even suppressed, they are used by Super Bowl winning football teams, PGA golf pros, Olympic athletes, Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C., where the top U.S. government politicians and military leaders go, and the Pope. So, if you're serious about vibrational healing these days, the company can give you a referral to a doctor, physical therapist, or chiropractor who has one. Or you can buy your own, if you have the money. The vibratory nature of the universe. Everything in the universe is vibrating. Even light is vibrating. Different frequencies of vibration give us the different colors, just like different frequencies of vibration give us the different notes in an octave of sound. The so-called 5 physical senses, touch, smell, hearing, taste, and sight, are all biological sensors that, for the most part, detect vibration in different ways. While smell doesn't directly sense a vibration, it is directly sensing physical objects in the air that have different vibrational parameters. Each sense perceives vibrations within specific, limited frequency bands. For example, through the sense of hearing, most people perceive vibrational frequencies in the 20 to 20,000 cycle per second range that we call sound. The eyes pick up much faster vibrations that we call light. But these 5 biological sensors we use only pick up a very, very small part of the infinite vibrational frequency spectrum. There are other frequency bands that the 5 senses cannot perceive, which puts a big hole in our information about what is really there. And for most people, this very limited data from the 5 sensors is the only thing that allows them to be in touch with the world around them. We are, for the most part, virtually blind in this universe. Humans have built machines that pick up some of the vibrations we can't get with our 5 senses. These machines translate what they pick up into the range that we can get with our senses. For instance, our eyes don't pick up on X-rays. They only see the slower vibrating visible light range. So we made X-ray machines that take pictures to show us the results of using the X-rays on a film that can see the visible light. Can you imagine being able to see such things as X-rays and gamma rays all the time? Radio waves are also in a vibrational frequency band that is not within the range of any of our senses. The circuitry in a radio or TV changes these vibrations to frequencies of vibration our sense of sight and hearing can perceive. There are many other things that we do not normally perceive, but all of these things and much, much more are available for us to perceive when we transcend the limits of our separate self. Illusions. Because of my early fascination with such things, I spent a great deal of time with Vishnu, bugging him with all the unanswered questions from my early fascination with metaphysics and science. I always hear references to life being an illusion, or what we're perceiving is actually an illusion. Does that have to do with our limited senses? Life being an illusion is more a question, I think, I'll let you save for Zayn. But I can answer you about sensory perception illusion. In part because of the limitations of our senses, much of what we perceive is an illusion. A table, for instance, is not what it seems to us. In moments of higher consciousness, I've seen what looks like a crawling or a vibration in wood or stone. Is that what you mean? It is part of what I mean. You may be seeing the life of the molecules of the object or the auric vibrations. But I would need to know more specifics of your perceptions, which we'll discuss later, perhaps. To give you an easier to understand example of obvious illusions, consider the modern invention of television and the picture that you see on it. The pictures we see are not pictures at all, but many individual lines of parts of the picture flashing at us one at a time. They start at the top or the bottom of the screen and go to the other end. But these lines appear faster than our human perception can process. So we don't see them as individual lines being flashed all at one time. Instead, the many lines seem to be there all the time, making whole pictures. Movies are similar. As many as 30 still pictures are being flashed in 1 second. We see it as a seamless presentation and have the illusion that the people and the things on the screens are moving, but they aren't. Certain animals with better perceptions just see the lines on a TV or the still pictures flashing during a movie. That is one of many examples, but there are even far more reaching illusions about life and the world around us. Even the TV set is not really what it seems to us. The true reality beyond our perceptions. Even the most solid physical objects are but atoms, and the parts' energy they are composed of, vibrating at various rates in various arrangements. These vibratory rates and arrangements of atoms are perceived by us through one or more of the very limited 5 senses of an earthly human body. We then process this sensory information, and in our limited consciousness perceive these atom groups as the things that make up the world we live in, the things that are all around us. TVs, cars, carpets, skin, air, you name it. What we think all these things are is the result of the warped assumptions our brain makes, the assumption being based on the very limited data we get from our senses about a certain arrangement and frequency of vibration of atoms. And atoms are just a building block of the same one thing, the stuff of the universe. Thus, everything we think we see is really just an illusion, not its true form, just a conceptual form created by our brain. We put together an image or idea of what we think we're perceiving by virtue of our programming, expectations, experiences, etc., manipulating the bits of information we get from our highly limited senses. When you see the movement or vibration in a solid object, like you were just talking about, whatever it is you're seeing is because your consciousness is expanding beyond its limitations, and you are glimpsing a bit more of reality. So our consciousness and our limited senses really create a perceptual handicap. It's even worse than that, Peniel. We are already starting with a great handicap of perceiving such a small part of the world around us. Then, to make matters worse, we process that information through the filters in our emotions and preconceptions. This all leaves us with a very inaccurate illusion of reality. And just a little change in the frequency of the vibration of atoms, how fast or slow they vibrate in a molecule, group of atoms, can completely change our perception of what it is. For example, we know the slower vibrating molecules of H2O as ice, a solid. As the frequency of vibration increases, we know them as water. a liquid, faster still, as steam, faster yet, as hydrogen and oxygen gas. Then where? I don't know. As vibrational frequency increases, a more etheric quality develops. Something may even seem to vanish, like steam. But nothing is ever lost in the universe, it just changes form. Sometimes the apparent form is changed by atoms joining groups, molecules, or what I like to call atomic cults. Author's note, no relation to poison gas cults. But regardless of how they're arranged or how they appear, the true reality of it all is that it's always the same one energy vibrating at a different frequency. Orbital life, the relationship pattern of the universe. We discuss some aspects of solar system relationships in the chapter on soulmates, and while some of the material below is somewhat repeated, this was a continuation of the above conversation with Vishnu, and it is pertinent in this chapter in its metaphysical sense. Looking to outer space, we find countless stars, suns like the star of the solar system, with planets of its own in orbit. Constantly moving, vibrating, they follow the same universal laws of all, as does the atom, the microcosmic solar system. Indeed, anywhere we look in life, be it outer space or inner space, everything is either atoms or solar systems. They are like octaves of the same thing. Micro, macro, cosmos. There is something else. What is a building? A tree? They, and anything else that seems to be something else, are but an assembly of atoms, solar systems. I can't emphasize the significance of this enough. It is one of the most important facts there is, and understanding its full meaning is one of the great keys to understanding the universe and our lives. What are these other great keys? The next great key can also be seen with atoms and solar systems. It is their orbital pattern, their orbital relationship. It is the one primary pattern that exists in the universe. It pervades everything, and all else is built upon it. Peniel, it is what our human male-female relationships are based on. It is what makes soulmates soulmates. But aren't orbits separate things amongst separate solar systems or atoms? How can it be what everything in the universe is built upon, and how can it be what human relationships are based on? Look into space at night. Each shining star you see is either a sun, an object radiating light that is surrounded by and orbited by planets, or a planet giving off light reflected from the light of a star. Study what scientists have discovered about the solid objects that surround us. Water, trees, buildings, stones, earth, plants, human bodies, they are all made up of atoms. And what are atoms? Microscopic stars being orbited by planets, but very tiny and very, very rapidly. They are an octave of the stars and our own solar system. Read the ancient texts. We have had this knowledge long before the ignorant masses discovered that the earth wasn't flat. Before they discovered that the earth wasn't the center of the universe. Before they discovered that the earth revolved around the sun rather than what they previously thought, that the sun revolved around the earth. Before they discovered atoms, soon they will discover more and more. Consider, what if everything is orbiting something else? What if, when you get smaller than atoms and bigger than solar systems, the same or similar circular orbital pattern is found. It does, in some way or another, even though they haven't discovered it yet. Author's note: much of this has recently been discovered by modern science. What if it goes on infinitely like a never-ending spiral? It must. It is the pattern of creation, of the universal spirit. If you contemplate it for a while, the pattern of an atom or solar system is, in a sense, the only reality. It is the primary form of life in the universe. This pattern is the basis of the building blocks of our illusions. And what is it comprised of? This amazing, all-pervasive pattern consists of individual parts functioning as one. This oneness is achieved by virtue of the nature of the polarities of the individual parts, plus, minus, male, female. Electrons of an atom are like the planets of a solar system. They are oppositely charged, the opposite sex, to the nucleus of an atom, and they are attracted to each other, just as the planets and sun of a solar system are. The polarized parts flow together in a particular way that is dictated by universal law. The pattern is orbital because of the nature of polarized relationships in space. There is always a center, a central sphere that gives, that flows out energy and attracts, and that central object is surrounded by objects that are attracted to and attach themselves to the center object. In the case of a solar system, the sun is the center that all the planets revolve around. In the case of an atom, the nucleus is the center that all the electrons revolve around. They are the same thing. The outer objects, electrons or planets, momentum, their speed as they travel through space, becomes a circular movement once they are attracted to and attached to their central object, the sun, a star, or a nucleus. That movement is cyclic. In other words, it keeps orbiting around and around at a certain speed, repeating its cycle in a given period of time. Thus, a vibrational occurrence is created of cycles per something, second, day, year, whatever. In the case of the Earth orbiting the Sun, it is a 1 cycle per year. In the case of other planets, it's faster or slower. In the case of atoms, it's very, very fast and different for each atom. Taking this a step further, what if everything is orbiting something which is also orbiting something else? Then all of them function as one, and a complex vibrational pattern exists. They each link up with all other objects, becoming a part of their flow and one with them. In the entirety of the universe, all things are interconnected as one in this way. And the basis of all this is the universal pattern we see exemplified so perfectly in the atom or star systems. It follows and reflects universal law perfectly. This pattern flows in perfect harmony with universal order. I am beginning to understand, but I still don't understand the relationship it has to human relationships. What if this form, this pattern, represents the relationships of beings? What if each atom is a conscious being composed of soulmate beings? What if each solar system is a conscious being composed of soulmate beings? Each planet and sun is a being in and of itself that make one being together. What if every being plays two roles, like both parent and child at the same time? surrendering to something and directing something. What if every star is both an outflowing, positive polarity, directing position to its planets, but also is like a planet to something else that it orbits? What if the planets are taking a receptive, negative polarity, surrendering posture to a sun, but are functioning like a sun to something else that orbits it, or is affected by it? According to the teachings of the children and my personal realizations, all of the above is true. Many, many things can be learned and understood by contemplating the above concept. Contemplation of this pattern has guided the understanding of masters in all matters of universal and earthly life, but thus can also provide the contemplative seeker with profound answers. Truly understanding the meaning of this pattern and applying it to human life can provide the deepest understanding of the nature of men and women and male-female relationships. It is the perfect pattern of the harmonious interaction of polar opposites. Thus, with contemplation, it can show us the way to have perfect relationships, helping us achieve perfectly harmonious interaction with our own soulmates and other humans. Beyond the five senses. Earlier, we said that for most people, the five senses are the only thing that allows them to be in touch with the world around them. A person who is universally conscious has transcended the separate self and perceives things with more than five senses, and experiences them directly without the filters. But you don't have to achieve universal consciousness to start perceiving more. Anyone can achieve greater perception if they work at it. When we expand our consciousness, we can access other means to perceive spectrums of vibration, normally beyond human reach. We can sense these other spectrums or planes if we transcend the physical limits and tune in to them. This takes place when there is an activating of an evolutionary spiritual energy phenomenon called the Kundalini. The Kundalini lies dormant inside us all. When the Kundalini becomes active, it traverses the spine, energizing nerve centers called plexus, and endocrine glands that are normally dormant, or just performing on a lower vibratory level, maintaining normal physical body functions. The activation of the Kundalini causes the subsequent action or awakening of 7 centers along the spine called chakras in most spiritual traditions. They are like new, previously unused senses in a way. Each of the chakras allows receiving and transmitting on different planes of vibration. For instance, probably the most famous of the chakras is the pituitary, or third eye. When this is opened, it gives one what has been called second sight. This new perceptual capability will vary depending on the degree of opening. A medium-level opening will give one the ability to see the energy fields that surrounds all things. Much more can be perceived when it is fully open and functioning in coordination with the other chakras. When the chakras are properly opened, you essentially exist on these different planes also. Here's a not very good allegorical example. You can think of it kinda like this. You have 7 television sets, each with a different show that is a different version of the same show about your life and the world around you playing on them. One is black and white and one is color. One lets you see previews of the future of upcoming shows. One lets you see everything like an X-ray machine. One lets you see the atoms in everything. One lets you see your life like a picture-in-a-picture TV, showing 2 different channels, with the big picture being the entire universe, and the little one in the corner being what's going on in your life at the time, etc., etc. But rather than just being a show for you to watch. They allow you to become part of the show and live in and interact with the shows. And the Kundalini is the power supply that initially turns these TVs on, TVs you have never even seen before or knew existed. Caution. If the Kundalini rises and opens chakras without proper preparation, guidance, or control, it's something like being a radio that has no tuner, no means of selecting and maintaining the desired frequency. This opens one up to receive any vibration erratically. Some cases of insanity and possession are results of this occurrence. We caution you to not use any technique that forces Kundalini unless you are under the guidance of a true teacher. We deal more with Kundalini and related subjects in Part 2 of this book. Spiritual stimulation of the five senses. Vishnu continued imparting his wisdom. Some physical vibrations that can be picked up by our five senses have harmonics, parallel vibrations of a higher frequency, and forms that correspond with higher spiritual vibrations. When we pick up these vibrations, the harmonics and forms stimulate a like response with the person receiving them. This can be experienced through any of the senses. Using sound for an example again, it would be like hearing beautiful music that takes you to levels of spiritual elation, rapture, giving you feelings of peace and unity with the universe. When this happens, all that is actually taking place physically is that an array of vibration within a certain frequency band is being received by you hearing the music. So why do we get those effects, those emotions and feelings from the music? I was just getting to that. Because the vibrational form, music, and harmonics resound within you and allow you to tune in to the source of what they correspond, that source is what the composer was connected to or feeling when the music was composed. The sense of smell is not as simple, but here are just a few examples of the way harmonious universal vibrations manifest to various senses. To vision, a mandala, spiritually elating dance movements, elating colors and art, the beauty in nature, like a sunset. To touch, the feeling of the universal life energy, prana, chi, ki, flowing through your body, a loving touch. To hearing, spiritually elating music or sounds, the sounds of nature. To smell, the fragrance of a flower or pure incense, frankincense, myrrh, lavender, and others, in their pure state, and excellent for meditation and creating a spiritual vibration in the environment. The effect of odors on a physical body is unequaled. It is very powerful. They can even stimulate past life memories. The sense of smell is the only one of the senses directly connected to the brain and the outside physical world. Smells come from physical particles in the air that directly contact part of the brain, which is accessed through your nose. Smells actually directly activate emotional centers in the brain, and thus, those emotions can trigger childhood memories, or even past life memories. Odors can thus be healing, or create problems. Keep in mind that an odor that is beneficial to one person may not be for another. Try various types. You'll know which are for you. The combination of frankincense and myrrh or the combination of lavender buds and orris root are the most powerful for stimulating past life emotions. and thus memories, because these were used in our ancient temples and healing centers. Alrighty, I'm going to stop there for today, and I'll pick it up again next week. We are at page 296 of 377, so we've got about, I want to say 2, maybe 3 weeks to go on this book. Then I'll pick up another. Hope you're all enjoying this as much as I am. Wow, it's deep. I thank you all for listening. See y'all later. Bye now.